We're good.
Got the wrong glasses to read, but you know. So I'll call the school committee meeting to order. This is the first of our virtual school committee meetings on March 30th at 6 o'clock. I have a script related to conducting open meetings through video. So if you'll indulge me, I'll read through that and then we'll start off the meeting. So as a preliminary matter, this is Paul Brennan, chair of the school committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peter Tufts.
Here.
Nate Jerome.
Here.
Bruce Edwards.
Here.
Kristen Fayette Clark.
Here. That was close, Paul, by the way.
Yeah, sorry. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ted Friend.
Here.
And Nancy. And now
Here.
how I butchered the rest of them. Good evening. This open meeting of the Sutton School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly addressable physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, the Sutton School Committee is conveying by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that take care not to share screen on your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by this recording. Meeting materials. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the district's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. There's only two left. If members wish to encourage and colloquially, with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. You survived through that and you're still here. Netflix is clearly empty. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. This is Nate Jerome speaking.
Nate
Does that
made a
work?
motion. That works perfect.
Okay.
Nate Jerome's made a motion. Is there a second?
Bruce Edwards will second.
Made in second. Any comments or questions? Nate, do you have any comments or questions?
I do not.
Kristen, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I'm good.
Peter, comments or questions?
No, sir.
And Bruce, any comments or questions?
None.
We're going to do that all over again. And there are no comments. I'll look for a roll call vote. Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
That almost sounded like from the federal government or something, did it, Mr. Edwards? Nate?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Paul? Aye. Carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the FY20 budget update. I assume, Nancy, you're going to walk us through this.
Yes. So at this point in time, there aren't any updates to the budget that haven't been brought to your attention. During the school closure, we're currently paying all employees at this time. The accounts payable is expected to decrease because we are not having classroom time in the buildings. Examples of these line items would be classroom supplies and materials and for substitutes for those line items. We are offering breakfast and lunches for all students in need during this closure. It has just been confirmed that we will be reimbursed for all free and reduced families for the meals that we are giving out. We are receiving constant updates with guidance on how to proceed. And due to this unprecedented time, there are a lot of questions on how we proceed that we are still in the process of determining on a lot of information. The Department of Education is working with us to get these questions answered as best as they can. I will continue to monitor the budget and update you with the guidance as we receive it as we move forward. And that's all I have.
Super, thanks. Bruce, questions?
I have no questions.
Kristen, questions?
Just wondering in general about all of the accounts that we're paying on, say, for instance, transportation. Are we getting credits back on that since we're not using it?
So that we're still working on that.
Okay.
So I had a conference call today with the Department of Education, and what we're going to do is work with other school districts that have the same transportation vendor as we do. And we're going to collaborate together and work out what is the best action to take. So to our knowledge, our current transportation vendor has laid off their bus drivers. So if we pay anything, it will be a lower percent. It's just as a group, we're going to determine what that will be. And before that's done, we'll come back and report that information to you.
Okay. So for any services like that, that's how you're proceeding then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Well, there's still so many unanswered things. We're still working on the out of district tuitions on how to proceed with that. So it has been confirmed that we should pay the collaboratives, but not at the other schools. So we're still funneling that out and trying to figure this stuff out. So those are the two big ones that we're trying to figure out.
Okay, and then for other things like trash, I'm assuming we're still paying,
Yep,
so we're not on a reduced schedule then for them?
Not to my knowledge. I will touch base with Roger on the trash. I'll speak to him about that, but we have a contract on that. So
Yeah.
we would have, I'll pull that and look at that. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
well, I'm just wondering if, we could change it from, if we've been doing a pickup every week, do we go
Right.
to every few weeks? Because most plans
Yep.
or most places do have that. Okay.
Right.
So all of my questions, concerns revolve around things where we're paying for services now that we're
That
not.
aren't rendered. Right. Yep.
I'm good.
Okay.
Ted, you had a question?
No, what I wanted to say was we are seeking guidance because we're all in the same spot. And right now what we're hearing is they're asking us to pay our vendors. But I do think, you made a good point about trash removal. We don't need it picked up twice a week, or we probably only need it picked up once a month. So we'll reach out to them. So we'll take a look more carefully tomorrow if there are any other vendors in that situation. But again, we get updates every single day. Now with the stimulus package, there's conflicting information on that as well. So what I'm going to recommend to the committee, what I'm going to advise the committee is that we plan on continuing to pay our staff through this. Well, all the STA members are going to get paid through the whole duration, and most of the SESA members, if not all. We do have two areas of grave concern. One is aftercare revolving and the cafeteria revolving, because those two accounts rely on revenue to come in because it's not part of our regular operating budget. And so I have a conference call tomorrow morning with Jim Smith and Tim Harrison to talk about if we have to furlough employees, how do we go about doing that? And we want to look at it through the lens also of the new stimulus package, because it may be that we're required to pay them in order to receive stimulus money. So those are all things that we have to sort out over the next week or so.
I'm going to keep going down the list. Pete, you had questions?
I do not.
Nate, any questions?
Nope, not at the moment. Thank you.
And I've now got a list I'm running down. I was relying on the Zoom list, which changes. I'm going to go back. Bruce, you had said no, and then we'd had discussion. So I just want to verify if you've got any more.
I'm good.
I'm good also. That was item 3 on the agenda, and I think it's covered, and I think I can go. And I really have no idea what that's going to share. Nate, can you confirm, is the agenda showing?
It is.
Okay. So I'm going to switch over to item 4 on the agenda. That's Ted with an update on COVID-19 and all of the fun we're having with that.
Thank you. So I prepared some basic remarks, and then I thought the committee would probably want some clarifying questions. This morning we finished a comprehensive letter to staff, a comprehensive guidance document on what we're going to do with remote learning going forward. It's about a 12-page document. We designed this document by looking at other districts and what they were doing, and combined with what we're doing internally and what we're doing in the Blackstone Valley to come up with this document. We also looked at the Commissioner of Education's guiding documents. So on our website now, you'll find the district's guiding documents and the commissioner's guiding documents for people to view. Next, I asked each principal, based on these guiding documents, to draft their own letter for each individual school based on these guidelines, because there's going to be a difference in the guidelines for the Early Learning Center compared to the high school. So each principal has done that, and those are going out to parents. They either have already gone out to parents, or they'll go out to parents later this evening or first thing tomorrow morning to answer any of the questions that they have. All principals are having Zoom staff meetings, and I am also having Zoom staff meetings every Tuesday, and sometimes we have a second meeting with the leadership team. In each of these meetings, we've also invited the 2 union presidents so they can be part of the discussion, so we're working collaboratively together. And I will say that both unions have been outstanding in this process. They have been very cooperative and supportive, and it's worked very, very well, and I appreciate all of their efforts. All staff have Zoom accounts now. I think it's important for parents to be patient because there's a different comfort level with staff members. Some staff members are very comfortable using Zoom. Others are a little cautious and learning the program. But countless teachers now are having regular Zoom meetings with their students, able to meet with them and talk with them. But it's not really going to replace what happens in the classroom. The commissioner's guidance marries up my thought as well, that under these conditions, remote learning should be really no more than a half a day of classroom time. And in the lower grades, probably a little less than half a day, because it's not the same learning environment. Teachers will be available to all parents 3 hours every single day to answer questions and help guide them through the process. We also have, with special education students, we're incorporating more, having instructional assistants participate in the process, maybe work with small groups of students to help them through this difficult time. We continue to provide breakfast and lunch to the community. We do invite more than just free and reduced lunch families. I believe we handed out over 200 breakfasts and lunches today. I think there are a lot of families that are unfortunately under the current situation struggling a little bit. But what we do is every Monday morning, we provide families with breakfast and lunch for their children from Monday through Friday. So it's a one-day-a-week pickup. We pack it up for them and provide it to them weekly. I said earlier that I do have a meeting tomorrow morning with Jim Smith to talk about if we do have to furlough people, how we will do that. And we're waiting for more guidance from the state around how we handle the stimulus and how that impacts how we handle our budget. I do want to say to students, parents, and staff that I want them to stay patient and to be kind to one another, that we are all in this together, and we will come out the other side a stronger community. I will be working on a public service announcement that we're going to be taping over the next few days that we'll put on the Community Access Channel to provide more information and maybe a little bit of levity under these conditions. One of the questions I'm anticipating you asking, what about MCAS? That's a district-wide question. State testing is mandatory both at the federal level and the state level. So Washington has waived the need to have MCAS testing for this year. And right now it's in the hands of Beacon Hill, and they have to take legislative action to allow the Department of Education to make alterations in the schedule. My sense is that based on being out of school at least till May 4th, that there may be no MCAS this year. So with that, I'll open it up to specific questions.
I'll start and go down the list again, and we'll play it like that. Bruce, have you got questions?
My first question is for Ted. Has there been any discussion, or is it preliminary, on the 180-day requirement for school days? Does this mean that with virtual learning that obviously there'll be no, we'll expect kids to be learning during what would be the April vacation, and that the end of school could possibly extend up until the end of June?
So based on the guidance we've received from the state, we only have to make up 5 additional days, so that we build in 5 snow days, and that's what we're required to go to. So our last day of school will be June 19th. So because of contractual obligations, we will have April vacation, and we will have school until June 19th. That will be the last day of school. And we don't have to make up any additional days. So we're covered contractually. And these days will count, although it's a very unique situation.
Okay. Thinking about some of the peripheral stuff that goes on, and again, my student is older, but how will we be handling issues for our upperclassmen as respects just preparing them for the college application process? I mean, people are worried about grades. People are worried about National Honor Society. People are worried about honor roll. How is that all going to be factored in for the upperclassmen, or the upper school, so the middle school and the high school?
So this will be addressed with all parents by Mr. McCarthy, and I'm sure he'll have a little bit more detail about how they're going to handle National Honor Society and those issues. It's a very difficult situation when you don't have school and you don't have the regular classroom setting. And so what we're planning to do for this year is that for the high school, we're going to give grades for the third quarter. We're going to give students time to make up that any work that they have missed, so that they're up to date with a number grade at the end of the third quarter. There are probably some individual situations or maybe a class or something where students may look to get some extra credit because maybe they, are a high-performing student, maybe didn't do quite as well in the first term as they would have liked. And for those individual situations, we're going to ask parents to work directly with Mr. McCarthy and those teachers to maybe allow kids to maybe get their grades up a little bit. We've talked a lot about what do we do with this fourth quarter. It's all remote learning. It's no way to control how the work is being done. So we plan on going with a completed, not completed approach to the remainder of the school year. And as students complete the work, and that's how it's going to be assessed, completed and not completed. And so their grade in high school, which is most important, as you're talking about, for college transcripts and everything, is those first three quarters, what their average is, what their number average is, will be their number average at the end of the school year. In the in the middle school, we haven't quite determined how we want to handle the third quarter because the stakes aren't quite as high. Actually, they're not high at all because the applications are already into BVT there for the first two quarters. Private schools, it's the first two quarters. It's really high stakes for our high school kids, especially our junior class, our sophomore class, going forward, and I'm not quite sure how the high school is working all of those details. There will be a letter going home to parents tomorrow or this evening. It's either tonight or tomorrow. And Mr. McCarthy will be holding parent conferences through Zoom to answer all of these specific questions for the high school parents.
I just want to jump in for a second, Bruce, and I'll go back to you. The question you raised about some of the support. I think this relates, Ted. Will there be hours where the guidance counselors would be available for sort of open Zoom meetings or for private Zoom meetings that you could ensure the counselor and the particular student or family had time available to discuss filling out applications or how to make things like that work?
Yes, I believe that's in the works. Obviously, we're coming into scheduling classes for next year. So the guidance counselors, along with Mr. McCarthy, have already been planning out how to do that. And with this new technology, they will be able to have those types of meetings with families and individual students to plan out their schedules.
And not a question, but just an acknowledgement. We've been monitoring Rich Levin Savage's morning announcements that have continued on. I certainly hope that everybody does check those out on the school website because he's doing a fantastic job. There's a guy who has a real good sense of humor. I certainly hope that there are some folks in the other schools that can do the same thing because we do get a good laugh out of it. And some of the teachers in the high school have been sending out assignments and keeping the kids, at least mine, active and engaged with schoolwork over the past couple of weeks, and that's greatly appreciated.
We have asked all teachers to provide enough schoolwork for parents and students to be working over. Initially it was 2 weeks, then it immediately went to 3 weeks. Now it's 7 weeks. But it is the expectation that teachers are providing a minimum of 2 hours a day of schoolwork in the lower grades, and for middle and high school, 6th grade to 12th grade, a minimum of 3 hours of schoolwork each day. It can be done with projects. There's a variety of ways to handle this. I do think this is a great opportunity. You know, some of my public address and comments that I'm going to have tomorrow when we videotape it is, this is an opportunity to deal with things that came out of the Vision Committee last year. The fact that what a great opportunity for children to learn how to cook and learn how to crack an egg and make eggs over easy, to learn how to cook dinner, to learn how to work in the yard, to grow a garden, and to learn how to plant seeds and watch a garden grow and learn all of those things. It's a great opportunity for us to think out of the box, and those are kind of the things I'm looking for. I've seen lots of videos from our elementary school of students creating their own videos, their how-to videos. I see science experiments going on. So there's lots and lots of creative things happening out there. And I think that's the type of learning I'm looking for. The other thing that I'm going to tell the community is, if you want to minimize regression, the community has to set aside an hour each night or an hour during the day where students are reading. It's the single most important skill. Turn up the computers, turn up the laptops, turn up the video games, and just read quietly. I think everybody needs some downtime, some quiet time during these stressful times. And those are the types of things I'm going to be asking the community to work on.
I'm going to jump to Kristen. Have you got questions?
Okay, so can you clarify how much time we've got teachers working with students?
Teachers are
Direct.
available.
Go ahead.
They're to be available 3 hours a day. We originally started out 2 hours a day. With the latest guidance, and we're going to be out longer, we're asking teachers to make themselves available, working with the families, to be available to them 3 hours per day, to answer any questions, help them with their work, whatever is needed.
Okay, so then how much time are you looking for guidance to spend as far as dealing with kids, helping kids through whatever process they might be going through right now? And that leads me to social services. And do we have those set up and appropriate for now? We're going to need them especially later too, but do we have social services available, kids who might be having a harder time dealing with the issues that are going on right now?
Our guidance counselors, adjustment counselors,
Mhm.
anybody dealing with mental health issues, I would say are working a lot longer than 3 hours a day. We continue to have SAM meetings, which is meetings to talk about students that might be struggling. They're reaching out to those families on a regular basis, keeping contact with them, because that's one of our biggest worries as a school district and as a community. Children that are struggling and they're in isolation. And so we are tracking them on a regular basis. Our guidance counselors set up their own Snapchat site for them to communicate with kids. And so that's an ongoing issue. Certainly for high school guidance counselors, they are going to have to put in more than 3 hours a day to possibly do all of the work to reschedule and schedule students for next year. So, but working with the STA, the teachers union, we've agreed that for classroom teachers, support staff, it's 3 hours a day.
So how are they getting the information out to the kids as far as what they should be working on?
Every teacher has every student's email address, and all students in our school districts have email addresses. And so at the middle and high school, I think just about every teacher uses Google Classroom, and they're using that. They're using Zoom. And like I said, they have everybody's, so they're able to email directly every single student in the district. In the elementary school, they do the same thing.
Okay, so are they considering, as we move forward, are they considering some platform like this, like Zoom or something, to do small projects with smaller groups of kids within a classroom?
Well, I can just tell you that teachers are already doing that.
Okay.
So I receive, like I said, every day someone will send me a video of a student doing an experiment or doing different things. So I haven't gotten into the weeds in that myself. That's a building level. So we have our teams of teachers that are working together and sharing ideas and sharing ways to teach remotely, which is very different than what we were doing before. So we have some staff members are very adept at it already. And we've asked those staff members to work with teachers that may not have that experience yet. And so I think we've done a very good job thus far, actually a great job so far under the circumstances. Because remember, 2 weeks ago on a Friday, I met with the middle and high school staff at 2 o'clock and told them we're not going back to school for 2 weeks on a Friday afternoon. At 3 o'clock, the Early Learning Center and elementary staff. So we were able to get this up and running just in a couple of days. So we've been playing a little bit of catch up. And then on Sunday, the governor announced it's a 3-week extension, and now he's extended it all the way up to May 4th. So teachers are working very hard to try to get students as much in their hands as possible. And they're trying to be as creative as possible so that it's an authentic learning experience.
Okay, so I've got a couple more questions. So as far as the time spent emailing, is that included in their 3 hours of being available? And my next question is, how do we get to 3 hours? What makes 3 hours good?
We just went off the governor's guidelines. You know,
So where'd they get it then?
well, I'm just going off of something that came from the state level that I think we have to be, I think we have to take into account that this is unprecedented. I also think you have to take into account that our own staff have their own families in many cases. And so we have to be respectful of them as well, that they also, if they have children, which a lot of our staff do, that they also have to be working with their own children and their own education. I would venture to say that the vast majority of our teachers are putting far more than 3 hours a day into this. I know that just in my own job, I have been inundated with information, and I'm constantly inundated with emails, and I just respond every single day, Saturdays and Sundays, because it would become overwhelming if you don't stay ahead of this. So it's a minimum of 3 hours we're asking teachers to do, and I'm sure many, many teachers are doing much more than that. But again, we're trying to be, one of the things, and you talked about mental health. What we don't want to do is put unrealistic expectations on parents and students and being able to manage helping the students in this process. If we tried to do 4 or 5 hours, I think that's unfair to parents, and I think it's unfair to students. And so I think a half a day's worth of work with the younger kids, a little bit less than that. And then if they do an hour of outside reading beyond that, I think that's a balanced approach to this issue.
I wonder, Ted, if it makes sense to, or if it's possible to ask the teachers not to necessarily spend hours on it, but can they try to keep some track of the time they're spending in 3 hours? Are they getting 3 hours of phone calls, or are they finding it's mostly emails? Are they spending Zoom? I would be curious if we could get a sense of where the time distribution is and how they're able to help or engage with the students the most.
So tomorrow morning during my administrative meeting, we'll talk about creating a survey for that, to gather that information. And so while I have the union president on and the principals on, because we had talked about it when we met on Friday in a conference call about doing a survey. We've talked about a number of different surveys that we probably think we need to do, but certainly we'll put out a questionnaire and a survey to staff probably toward the end of next week and get a sense of, let it go for another week and get some data to provide to the school committee.
Yeah, my biggest concern with all of this is, one, are we spending the appropriate amount of time? I'm not saying that there's a magical time, 5 hours, that's great. I don't know. I'm just wondering where we got the 3 hours from. Do we just pull it out of a hat? And then my second concern is keeping kids engaged. So how do you engage them now that they're in a completely different environment? How are we making sure, or how are we trying to ensure their success in doing this?
And I think that's the $64,000 question. You know, so much of this falls on the parents. You know, we can reach out to students, we can send them emails, we can follow up, and the vast majority of the teachers are doing this. But we need cooperation with the parents, and we need to work on this together. This is not going to be easy. I mean, don't kid yourselves. I had a teacher in here today, and she teaches special education in the district, and she has 2 young children. And, you know, she's reaching out and working individually with a number of students and providing them supports. And she talked about how difficult it is to do a 45-minute reading and writing lesson with her elementary school daughter. And she's a teacher, and it's difficult. So I think asking people to do, I think we would create more of a mental health crisis if we try to put too much on families. We put strain on family relationships, and we certainly want to avoid that. We're just simply not going to be able to replicate the school day. You know, if this continues and goes longer, we're going to have to look at what do we do. Now remember, everybody's in the same boat. Kansas has canceled school for the rest of the year. Vermont has canceled school for the rest of the year. Massachusetts through May 4th and potentially beyond that. The whole country's in the same boat. We're all dealing with this. And so we're all going to have to figure out a way to get our students caught up. There are districts that are asking families to follow almost the regularly scheduled day. And I would say that that's a huge mistake on those communities' parts. I don't think it's realistic, and I don't think it's fair to those children and those families to put that level of pressure on them. And I don't think it's fair to be grading students in a traditional sense when we have no control over the learning environment. And so we have to be thoughtful about that. And the bottom line is we want to reduce and do our best to eliminate regression, and try to help kids through this difficult time. I am concerned about, you know, when they're younger, we can get them caught up. When they're juniors and sophomores in high school and they're taking Algebra 2 and they're taking, you know, AP Sciences and AP Social Studies courses, it's difficult to make that information up in a short period of time. So we have a lot to sort out. I talked to my principals today. We're in triage mode right now, and we need to start thinking and planning for the future. But I want to try to minimize the pressure we put on families. As I watch the news every day, like all of you do, I just think about all of the nurses that live in this community and all of the doctors that live in the town of Sutton, and the police officers and the EMTs and all the people that are directly affected by this crisis. What we don't want to do as a school system is to add to that crisis. And that's one of the big reasons why I want to limit the amount of time where we're putting that pressure on families.
Okay, and ultimately what I'm not saying that I want to put the pressures on families. I'm just trying to make sure, is the teacher available enough so that the students are able to interact in a time? Because if you're talking about the fact that, you know, everybody's only putting in a certain amount of time by saying they're available 3 hours, maybe the family has actually decided that we're doing this as a family for 3 hours, so they're not able to access the teacher. So I'm just trying to make sure that the teacher is available to be able to address those issues. I'm trying to make it so that this is a greater learning opportunity for the kids now. I mean, they've got the whole world to learn from. So, I just think, it's a waltz that we've got to somehow make it our way through right now. And it's forever changing. So I just want to make sure that we're at least getting some of the pieces in place so that we have some supports to keep kids feeling like they're engaged and keep teachers feeling like they're useful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do trust the professionalism of our teachers, and our guidance counselors, our instructional assistants, our everybody, custodians. I don't want to pretend that there won't be some teachers that maybe, and again, I don't know everybody's circumstance either. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on families right now. But I know as a young when I was teaching, I'd be available to my students. And I would say that the vast, vast, overwhelming majority of our teachers want to make sure that our students get everything they possibly can to be successful. And I know, like, the art teachers and the physical education teachers, they're all reaching out, providing different lessons for students to be working on. But that's the role of the principal, to be working with the individual teachers, guidance counselors. As another example, Carol McMahon and Sue Neefsey in the elementary school, they're doing, the social groups that they've been working on is still carrying them out remotely through Zoom. So we're being very creative. And I think everybody's stepping up to the plate on this. I really do.
Okay. Like I said, ultimately, learning should be fun. So I'm not looking, as I said, to put undue pressure. But I think this is also a great time for parents to get involved.
I 100% agree, and you should look forward to my PSA, Mr. Friend's Neighborhood, that'll be coming to cable access soon.
Go to Pete. Pete, have you got questions?
No, I think Bruce asked pretty much what I was thinking about asking. I was wondering if there's any thoughts to salvaging any sort of a sports season. I know that's probably not the most important thing right now, but people have asked.
So right now, the MIAA are meeting, well, I guess they met today. They're still holding out hope. I think that every day that goes by, it's more and more likely that spring sports will not take place. Based on everything I watch, and unfortunately I watch way too much of the news, I don't know how we could possibly think that we're going to be having sports with everything I'm reading in the news, but they have not canceled the season as of today. The earliest start date was going to be April 24th, I believe, would be when they open it up. But we've already closed school through May 4th. So
Sure.
That's already been pushed back. So I would find it hard to believe if we have sports.
Thank you.
And Nate?
Yeah, no real questions. Just again, these are extraordinary times. We've never seen anything like this. I find it rather impressive how well everybody's done to find out on a Friday you're out for 2 weeks. That doesn't allow time to prepare, and that's everybody's in that case. And I know this is tough. You look at it; it's tough for the faculty, it's tough for the students, it's tough for the parents. Even today, I'm home. I'm on a Zoom call. I work from home, but my wife's working from home, and I think about it and I see some of the high school kids, the middle school kids, they have some ability to do this work themselves. And we're fortunate we're in a community where I think the parents are very involved and they take an active part in their children's education. But it's a challenge. I think a lot of the families in this town, they have both parents working. And that's a challenge to then say, we're going to need help during the day. So I think this is going to be a lot of work. It's going to take help from everybody, and it's not going to be easy, but I do appreciate all the work that everybody's doing. So thank you.
And I do want to I think that at the high school level, I think it's going to be a collaborative approach between guidance, the administration, the teachers, and the parents and the students to make sure that we don't miss anything and make sure that our students are protected in the process of applying to colleges and universities, if they're applying to go into the military or into the workforce, that they're as prepared as possible and that they have every opportunity and they don't lose an opportunity because of this crisis. And I have no doubt that Mr. McCarthy will make sure that, and the staff make sure they work to help every one of our students have every opportunity as they go through this process.
Ted, I wonder if conversations have started yet, besides the dog, who I assume you can hear, who hates FedEx. Graduation, any conversations about that? At what point do you have to start talking about what do you do for graduation?
Yeah, that's a great question. We haven't canceled our graduation with Mechanics Hall at this date. And that's a conversation we're going to be having this week and what our options are. It's devastating for our high school seniors. Prom is in question. High school graduation is in question. And I've been holding out hope that something is going to happen. I'm having less and less hope about that. So we're going to talk about that this week. Again, I think the people closest to that decision is the high school staff, and how we approach that. If it's something we can push off and do later in the summer, it would be a shame to not have a graduation. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to have a graduation. If we have to delay it a month or two, it's still worth having that graduation experience for our students.
Right, I agree.
I could be more vague.
No, I was really curious. I assume there wasn't a decision at this point, but I wondered at what point you have to start to work through how you'll make that work. And I think that makes sense.
I think that we might have the next week and a half to make a final decision on that. And then I know that Terry Senecal was contacting Mechanics Hall. I talked to her the end of last week. She was going to contact them and talk about our options with them. But it is a rite of passage. And, I really feel for our seniors. This is something it's never happened before, certainly in my lifetime. So if we can hold out and have a graduation, we'll do everything in our power to do that.
And I think the answer has been pretty clear, but regardless of what happens for the remainder of the year, there isn't any thought of this year is in the books, everybody advances to the next grade so long as so far they've been advancing. Is that?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no.
Great, you were accepted to the University of Wonderful, but you got one more year here still.
They're moving on. No. Seniors are moving on. 8th graders will be moving on. I don't know the answer. If we miss 65 days of regular school, I don't think you can just, let me step back. I think it's easier to move them forward in the lower grades and take the first 60 days of school next year, like all districts are going to have to do, and do a lot of remediation, a lot of catch up. I just don't know how high school works. I don't know how, if you have Algebra 2 and I go to Algebra 2 and you miss 65 days of Algebra 2, how you just jump into pre-calc or pre-trig. There has to be some type of, how do we manage that? I do think everybody moves forward if everybody passes, but there is going to have to be a period of time next year where we do remediation. There's no way around that. And I just don't know how that looks. It is my hope beyond hope that on May 4th, we come back to school. I'm with the governor. I think it's a mistake to just say we're out of school for the rest of the year. I think we see what happens. Even if we get a month back with students and create some normalcy for our students is important. But to answer your question, I do think people move forward. And then we have to just remediate the best we can the following year.
Kristen.
Okay, so here's my thought, Ted, and I know you're not going to like it. The whole independent study thing. Seriously, you know, if we give kids the information to move forward, we've got smart kids. Yes, will it be tough? But as I said, I know they can do it. I remember doing a class from 9th grade, just that, and having the access to the teacher for questions. So it's why can't we try that?
We are going to try that. We are going to do that. We are going to provide new information going forward. We're not going to, what we did the first couple of weeks is just maintaining, not introducing new information. Going forward, we are. But we are going to have to there is going to have to be a period of time where we have students in front of us that we make sure that they gathered as much of that crucial information before they move on to a new task. That's all. But yes.
Right. And so this is a good time also to use Zoom as we're using it right now.
Absolutely. But it's not going to be the same. So we just want to make sure that we don't put kids in a position where they didn't have the prerequisite information to be successful. And that'll fall on the teachers. If you're a math teacher, you have the skills to be able to make sure you get kids caught up so they're prepared for the next round. So we're not going to wait around. We are going to provide new information. You know, my message to the community, though, is if you're in elementary school and middle school and high school, if you read every day and you write and you journal and you keep up and you write every day, and in the lower grades, if you work on your arithmetic and you practice and you work on some problem solving, in a community like Sutton, our kids will be ready to move on to the next grade with some, you know, remediation when we get back into the school district. We do have issues with special education. We have kids that struggle academically, and we're going to have to work out how we manage that situation to make sure that they're up to speed and caught up. That's why I've instructed the principals and the special education teachers to use our IAs. We have very many talented IAs that can reach out individually with students to provide them with guidance and support that maybe the parents can't work on. But we will get through this like all communities. You know, when I look at my daughter teaching first grade in the city of Worcester, and you have real serious ELL issues that trying to communicate with families where English isn't the first language at home, you have poverty issues. Our issues aren't quite the same as other communities. So our kids will come out of this just fine. Our families come out of this just fine. I am very concerned about the social, emotional issues that affect all families. So we just have to balance everything out and do our best to help our kids.
Would we be looking at, for next year's budget, rearranging or looking at some of the school choice funds for additional IAs or even teaching staff if you think that there's going to have to be sort of this recovery phase?
So I'll be honest with you. I haven't, other than being frightened about next year's budget.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that yet.
The question really was to plant the seed to start to think about how does this impact next year's budget. So if you can start to give that some thought around recommendation.
You know, right now I think, so let me talk about budget for a minute. I don't know what's going to happen. We will not obviously have a state budget for quite some time. And I don't, because a lot depends on what's going to happen with the federal budget, what the stimulus package looks like. I think back to 2010 when the federal government had to step in and provide ARA money. And I remember the federal government stepped in and provided ARA money, and then we got no money from the town for those first 2 years. We used that ARA money. I don't know what's going to happen with all of that. I will say this, the union, we're in negotiations with the STA. They are willing to hold off, at least my conversations with the union president, until we get more clarity on where we are with funding for next year. But it's very hard to make plans if we do not have the level of funding that we received this year, along with the traditional additional $400,000 from the town and the additional $40,000 from Chapter 70. So I'm concerned about that. On the flip side of this, because we're not in school, we will probably be able to save a tremendous amount of money to offset those increases in special education costs, which will allow us to continue to at least maintain the school choice revolving account and some of the circuit breaker money, so that if we do need to next year provide some additional supports for our students, we will have at least some reserve revenue to tap into.
And I think that it's going to require a little bit of thought around if you did have to, or you were able to spend additional funds, would it be in IAs? Would it be in trying to bring in a couple extra teachers? What's the best way to provide the services without worrying about money? And then let's come back together again and figure out, now that we have to worry about money.
We will look at that. We'll talk about it. I will tell you that outside of hiring the special education director, we have put a hold on hiring. We did have an English teacher at the high school who resigned a position, as an example. The high school wants to move forward and hire that position right away. We have Mr. DeLongchamp has accepted a position to be Auburn High School principal. I'm putting a hold on that. I do want to hire those positions, but I don't want to make any decisions on hiring until we have a clear understanding of where our budget is.
I worry a little bit on some of them. You're going to have to. I guess you don't know if the population goes down, but in terms of services, if you have teachers, I do worry a little bit there also. So you just have to balance that.
I don't disagree. Unfortunately, we are not the federal government, and we do have to live within a budget. And I think you all know my position. I'd like to hire a number of new positions, but we've done a great. You think about how we've operated for the last 10 years, and we haven't had to do an override. We have good reserves in a number of our revolving accounts, and the town has excellent reserves in a number of revolving accounts. And so we're in a good spot to weather a storm. But we need to continue to be careful with how we spend our money so that we're in a good position 2 and 3 years down the road as well. Because I don't think this is not a short-term crisis we're facing.
Last note I had was just if you've had any discussions, and we've talked a little bit, I think, about how do you keep the teachers engaged with the students, and certainly a lot of what I've seen on the media implies or tends to show that the teachers in some ways would like to be engaged with the kids as much as the kids, the other way around. Two pieces to that. I don't know whether folks saw Northbridge had a bunch of teachers in cars doing a parade, driving around waving. It got a great reaction. The same thing happening in a different place might not get the same reaction, but that struck me as sort of an opportunity to at least, make eye contact as you're driving by. The other piece, and it's probably more for the smaller kids, but certainly in the neighborhood I'm in, I'll bet it was a teacher pulled together, having people put animals out in their yards, and so that as folks were going for walks, they were doing find the animals or find the stuffed animals and the things. Maybe that's happened everywhere, but I didn't know whether there were ideas around how we can get teachers to show up like that.
So I know that there are a number of things that are going on in this community that I'm not even aware of. I do think that our teachers, I don't think it sounded good for anybody to have 2 weeks off. I don't think for 1 minute anybody thought, wow, this is great. Maybe a couple of days, I think teachers always look forward to that snowstorm and those types of things. I think people realize how much you miss being with children. Zoom is a great tool for us. We've handed out over 100 laptops. We're handing out another 20, or Chromebooks, we're handing out another 20 on Thursday. So we're able to communicate that way. I know that a bunch of teachers from the middle school drove by Mr. Goyette's house on Sunday because it was his birthday to wish him happy birthday. I'm not in favor of the drive-by stuff only because it kind of flies in the face of the governor's kind of, even though they're in their cars, we get kids coming out into the streets. But I know there are a lot of creative things. Maybe that's part of the survey, kind of get a sense of what teachers are doing to communicate with their students. As I said, I'm going to be doing a PSA so that I can reach out to the community in a general way to connect with kids, because I come to work every day and there's no one here. It's a strange, strange feeling to come to a school and it's empty every day of everybody other than Roger and I. So I know a lot of teachers are doing things, and maybe we could put them up on our websites or something so that we can share what some of the things that we're doing. I did see a video of Mr. Kennedy. Huh?
I just picked up on that PSA. That's a service announcement. That's excellent. I was worried there was a prostate thing going on and you were having.
Well, I am 58. So, yeah, we want to get out. It's, I want to add a little levity, or hopefully people find it a little levity. But I really want to get a message out to the community. My biggest thing is kindness. I have a picture on my door, kindness. I think we get a lot more out of people when we're kind to each other. And I think that message needs to get out to every community. But I do know there's a lot going on with all of our teachers trying to communicate with their students. I've seen everything on the news, especially a teacher playing tic-tac-toe in the window with their student. I know Mrs. Clark in the Early Learning Center, I saw her video out to her special needs students. I think everybody wishes we could be back in school right now.
Any other questions on the topics?
Can I just go back to one thing that Bruce asked? We're not going to be grading anything while we're out. It's done or not done. It's just not a level playing field for anybody, and it's not fair to anybody. And there's no way, it wouldn't be fair to try to say the work you did when you weren't in school counts toward your GPA. And so I wanted to be clear about that. We close the grades on third quarter, and that's your number grade. Work with your individual teachers if you would like to get your grade up a little bit. But we're not in a position where someone has an 88 or a 92 average and they want to get their grade up to a 95 average. That's not what I'm talking about. But if something happened, or someone was out sick, or they missed part of the year, and they usually are an A student or a B+ student, but they got a C one quarter, we don't want to penalize those types of students, but we just don't have the capacity to make up, every child's grade that was a little lower than normal. But certainly we cannot count, especially in the high school or any grade level, work that is done outside of the school.
Bruce, have you got a question?
Yeah, my comment wasn't specifically about our kids, but just we have to recognize that our students are competing against kids around the country for scholarship money when it comes to National Honor Society and everything else. And I just want to make sure that those kids don't get cheated out of what they've earned for scholarship money and opportunities, whether it's not because we didn't act, but because a different state or different district acted differently than what most have, and gave, I don't want to say give them an advantage, but kind of cheated and beat the system. I just want to make sure that we do everything we can to continue to put our kids in the top of the competition for money and opportunity to go to school.
100% agree. And I think if we close the books the third quarter, that's fair, and that's the number grade. But to your point, to be fair to everybody within the community, because you have very competitive students here, their GPA is very competitive for the different top honors in each class. And so we need to be very thoughtful, and I think our high school is being very thoughtful to make sure it's fair and that our kids can be competitive in the process. And that's what we plan to do.
I'm going to jump to new business, agenda items, action items.
I think we have to have our school committee meeting next Monday. This was just to get in front of the people, but we have to vote school choice for next year. We have to vote our SOA, which is that. So the SOA is how we're going to spend our increased Chapter 70 money that we're not receiving. And so the state is pumping in a whole bunch of money. They put in a regulation that we have to explain how we're going to spend the money. You have to vote that. We've already submitted it, just so you know. All we've done is state that we're hiring a health teacher in the elementary school. We're not getting any additional money from the state, where if you're Worcester and you got $840 per pupil and Sutton got $30 per pupil, they have a different process that they have to go through. So in other words, there are agenda items that we have to continue to work on. So it's my recommendation we have our meeting like this next Monday evening.
We'll do that. Other items? A couple of items just on mine. In terms of trying to manage the flow of making a Zoom meeting like this work, I do think it's important, or one of the thoughts I had was, as I kind of walk around and give folks a chance to speak, it's probably easier if we can do a topic. So if you have 2 or 3 things, do the topic, and then let's see if others want to step in and make a comment on that. Or even Ted, I'll pick on you for just a second. If there's a response, try to be conscious of, am I responding to the question, so that we can get all of the comments on that topic finished and then move on to the next. I think that would help. That speaks to, I just wanted to make sure that, are we following through on topics? And I don't know whether I'm going too fast or slow, but want to make sure that with the hand raised bit, or we make sure folks have a chance to speak. And then the last one is more of a question, I guess. I think this continues for a while. The student participation that we've had in the past, or some of the principals, I think as we do more and more of this, we should invite and have some feedback there as other participants.
Yeah, we can certainly invite and have a student update at our next meeting, and Di can certainly add that. We'll reach out to those students, and that might be actually, that would be perfect for the next meeting to get their perspective. I think that's a great idea. And we can certainly, we're having Zoom meetings all the time, so we can invite principals, because we're going to have to invite principals in to give their spring updates. Absolutely.
Nate?
Are we still on for the 12th with the finance committee? Is that everything's changing? So
I don't know. I would guess. See, I don't know all the regulations. I know that there are bylaws, and the FinCom has to have their work done prior to the town meeting. But this is such an unusual situation, so I haven't heard from Jim whether that meeting's still on or not. I will find out, and if that is the case, then we'll put on next agenda just to review the budget presentation that we're planning to give to the FinCom at our next meeting.
Anyone
Thanks.
else? Other items? Bruce?
Just want to the community, remind them that the Red Cross still needs blood. You can go on the Red Cross website and make an appointment and still practice social distancing. Likewise, we still have people in town who need food, and Michelle at the senior center and the food bank is accepting donations. You can make an appointment, drop it off outside, and they will bring it in the building, still keeping social distancing in mind.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ted, and all of the staff. It's as you've said, an interesting time, and I think you guys have done a spectacular job of trying to figure out how to communicate with folks and keep it moving. So that's good news. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? There's a second. This is a roll call vote. Bruce?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
And Paul Brennan, aye. Carries 5-0. Thanks, everybody. This is great.